This is The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel, and you're listening to the original movie prop collecting podcast, The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of, brought to you by Heritage Auctions, HA.com. Got some big entertainment auctions coming up. I don't know when this is airing, so I don't know whether the news is out or the news isn't out, but maybe you know or maybe you don't know. But go to HA.com and they'll tell you something.
Just wherever you are, just keep refreshing the page again and again, and eventually the news will land on you. How's that for a teaser?
We are coming to you not live, but at a very different time than we normally do. It is evening here in LA and relatively normal. The Vice President Harris just finished speaking. We were recording this on the final night of the convention, the Democrat convention. And Ryan, you are now back in London, where it is 5:30 in the morning, and you are exhausted. How is the time shift?
I'm upside down completely. I don't know why I agreed to do this. I hate all of you especially, Dave. I'm coming to you undead is what I'm doing this morning. Yes, we're back. You'll notice my background's a little bit different. My office sits at the top of the house, and I was, instead of trying to sneak past the children and hope that my ebullient intro didn't wake them, I snuck down into the basement instead, where I have my now famous podcasting curtain behind me.
The curtain travels with you at all times.
This is actually, if you recognize it, this is my often my unboxing location. So
okay. I just realized that.
It should
be
like familiar.
The TV room? Is that where like a family TV room kind of thing?
It's like the kitchen living area. So the TV room is a different thing, but there is a TV here, of course, because it's me. But it's like the kitchen sort of breakfast bar kind of area. And it's just it's the farthest place from my children's rooms at the moment.
And yet, at any minute, they're going to come in crying, going, "You woke us." Yeah,
that's right.
Are you a?
I left snacks outside the door because I'm at the kitchen, so I left snacks outside the door just in case there were early wakings. So I'm all prepared, Dave. And
are you going to force yourself into the sunlight like as soon as it rises? And do you manage to stay up and try and make it through the day? Is that your plan? Are you a melatonin person? What do you do for any of this stuff?
I'm up for the day. I slept on and off last night for a few chunks of hours. It's just the first night was great because I was so jet lagged and did not sleep on the plane at all coming back. So the first night was
Oh, that's actually good. I'm okay going west. I cannot go east. It really screws me up. When I go to Europe, the first couple of nights, it's like up at whatever, 3 a.m. I don't even know what time it is. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy, and then done. No, I mean, last night was not great, but we'll get there. So what I'll do is I'll try to stay up now for the day, do a bunch of work, and then limp to evening, and then hope that the tide begins to turn.
All right. Well, I know it's London, but sunlight, man, that's the key.
Yeah.
I think you just got to get sunlight.
No, we should get sunlight today. You'll start to see it rise above me. So yeah, how about that?
Very
How's
exciting.
that for a teaser?
Right. That's going to help
as we move along this pod. How are you, Dave? I miss you.
I'm good. I was going to ask you. I do miss you. I was going to ask you though. Is it nice being back and with your props and stuff? Is that nice?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely nice. I actually did have a what's new in props a bit because
look at that segue. Look at you, so tired, and that segue was effortless.
Just on it, and you setting me up and just smashing it down. And I returned to a very nice delivery from the great Chris Barton. And it was all lovely waiting for me in my office, and I set it all up. So I got my my Blade Runner suit jacket, at least no trousers yet because I don't have the room for the full mannequin as of yet. Might have to rejigger some things in the office to figure that out over the coming months and years. But for now, I just added the jacket to the mannequin that I already had for the shirt. And it looks fabulous. You saw some teaser pictures.
I saw a picture. Hopefully, maybe you can share some of them. It looks really, 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 really good. So yeah, it looks looking really nice. Yeah.
Thank you. And so that arrived. I had to have a little adjustment made to my whip stand because it was unless the whip was balanced just so. It was tipping over a bit, and that was on me because I
So
just
what does
asked
that
Chris
need?
to.
Just a little more weight on the bottom,
Yeah,
or yeah?
he weighted the plate at the bottom. I had asked him to. I had a stand that was shorter, and I'd asked him to extend it so that it sat more kind of proudly next to the new torso display. And I'd asked him to extend it without sending the whip along, and sort of learned my lesson yet again, like always send the prop. And it was fine at the lower sort of point of balance, but once it grew again, unless you put the whip on it, just so it sort of tipped back and forth. So he made that all safe and secure. And then Dave, you'll love this. Very fastidious of me, and this might is a little hard to explain, but I will put pictures in the feed. I have all these like little torso display mannequins, and essentially it's very fancy. There's a big, sometimes quite expensive prop covering the sort of silly store mannequin and making you forget that you're looking at a fiberglass recreation of a
Right,
human torso.
you're not looking at the mannequin is covered by shirt or jacket or whatnot.
Correct.
Yes.
And we have these very nice bases that Chris made that were made. The problem that was bothering me is they were all up, so you're seeing the sort of hardware where the bracket where the mannequin kind of can be adjusted
Ah,
and
okay.
slide up and down, and it was just looking a bit, I don't know.
Oh, I thought sometimes those are more inside the mannequin, like where if
Sometimes
you adjust it.
the ones that Chris has used classically are a bit exposed.
Gotcha.
Um, so I came up with this sort of idea that I pitched him to build these little like housing cylinders that sort of like click in and like
Oh, so they
so
kind
you
of
can,
surround it and it just looks like a thicker pipe, so to
and it
speak.
makes it look like a thicker pipe
Right.
that actually has the double benefit of covering the not attractive hardware and just making it feel more like a chunky museum display.
Okay.
And he did these three things for the ones that I had, and he also did one for the new Blade Runner, and came up with this very ingenious sort of uh, engineering for how all of those things how you would set it in, fit it in around the center of the pipe, and it's simple and genius. And well done to Chris. Engineering challenge accepted and conquered. And it looks great. It looks fantastic. Like it's as much as I love the Blade Runner suit, I'm staring at the little pipe
The
thing
pipe.
because I'm like, this is so cool the
When
way he did
Chris offers the pipe adjustment to other collectors for $10,000 each, the laugh's gonna be on you. Like,
he should
that's gonna be
patent
his,
this.
like, Shark Tank thing.
No,
Yeah, it's like the pipe
I'm
thing.
happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy to gift this to the world, and he should, because it's really it's very very cool. So I will post pictures of that. But no, it was very nice. I was, as you know, the other day I was feeling rather melancholy about leaving sunny Los Angeles to return here, and sort of, look, I love my job, but kind of knowing what I'm getting into,
Right.
dr- dreading the return
You've
to
been on a
school,
nice break among other things, so yes, yeah.
so to speak, yes. And also, just being that far away and everything, but coming home to a office full of sort of new props was a nice transition, shall we say. And yeah, it's just nice to be back in general. I missed my pillow, I missed my television, um and my kids were done, I think. So it was time, and they're about to start school again, new school year. So yeah, we're back in the thick of it. And yeah, it's I think overall it's good and healthy to be back.
Excellent, excellent.
What's new with you, Dave? Whether it's new in
Just
props or
a
just new in
little
life.
nothing new, very like a little bit of vague progress, which is, I have tracked down, um, I guess he is, the opposite number. He's the prop store's display guy here in Los Angeles, the guy that they use,
Ah,
a
yes.
guy named Tim Ralston. And I'm giving him, I guess, a shout out before I spoke to him on the phone. I actually managed to finally, I say finally on my part, not finally on his part. I have been meaning to call him for a week and a half, and I finally remembered to do it, like, as opposed to at 3 in the morning. I actually remembered at a normal, like, sort of, 1 PM kind of time where, and you can call another human and the human can call you back. So he called me back, and we are going to get together on Saturday morning, um, and work
Are you having him to
on.
the condo?
Yes, he's gonna come over to look at the
Great.
X-wing, and maybe a couple of other things, or at least,
Great.
while he's there. So progress. I mean, I'm no results, but forward motion. So that's something. I'll take
Excellent.
that. Yeah. So
Excellent.
so a little bit of what's new in props. and then just a general sort of I had forgotten. I think I spoke to you when we did the big wrap up on the prop store auction, brought to you by Heritage. That I had sold the crate, for $900. But I had forgotten. I guess I had some sort of rebel jacket from Force Awakens that I honestly don't even remember owning, but I when I saw it, I was like, oh right. And I got
Yeah.
my consigner results, and
You were
as of
surprised.
as of this moment, the rebel jacket from Force Awakens has not sold. So if anyone is interested,
Ah,
you can contact me, or I guess Prop Store, but you'll
yes.
pay more at Prop Store. But you can call me if anyone's interested. It was the rebel jacket. I forgot it was in there. So I believe I've managed to knock $900 off my bill.
Oh,
So I'm very excited.
congratulations, Dave.
Yes, excited about that.
Yeah, they
Yes,
they do send those
the
invoices
crate.
out
Yeah.
very quickly. The consignor settlement came out a little slower, so I was still reeling from the largest invoice I've ever gotten from Prop Store when my consignor thing came through, and that was very nice to see because that was some immediate, very quick math that made it much
No, that
more.
is good math. Much better than $934. Although I guess for a crate, that's not terrible. As crates, empty
That's pretty.
boxes.
That's
Yes, a
pretty good. Maybe
box
you could
that says
just
ILM.
have
Yeah.
them stuff that stupid jacket in the crate as an added bonus.
The crate is wrapped in the jacket to protect the crate. So yeah. Um,
Very,
um,
very good.
but
Props as
so,
packing
yeah.
material here on the
So
Stuff
that
Dreams.
was exciting, and then I we talked about this earlier, and then I'm actually wait to see this segue. Um, I had sent you a picture of someone that was making some displays for pulse rifles that are sort of based on the old, I think, Icons display, and it is sort of
Yeah.
it's the floor of the Sulaco with some very nice sort of acid damage, I guess, from the one of the aliens or something like that. And I think those were used for the Icons pulse rifle replica, but somebody's sort of making something very similar right now. And I sort of was going back and forth as to whether I actually do think it's quite nice, but I couldn't tell if I put my uh, pulse rifle on it if it made my pulse rifle seem like a replica in its way. Uh, and you are of the opinion it kind
That
of
is it that
does.
it
Yeah, it
did.
kind of
Yeah,
does.
I
Yeah.
love that display for a replica. I just think original props demand something just very
Simple.
simple and museumy and elegant.
I was toying with the idea of this is a so it's like the floor of the Sulaco, and then it's sort of mounted on it. That's how it looked when
Mm.
I guess Icons did it. And then I was wondering, well, what if I just used that as just the base and then did a simple sort of thing so that was like the rectangular base, but it sat not mounted to it, but just sort of sat on top of it. Does that do anything better for you, or still not really?
That's better. It's better.
It's
I just,
slightly enthusiastic. It's
it
better,
is
but
better.
not a
I just
lot better. Okay, yeah. Okay,
yeah. I
that's
mean,
the
you see
answer.
the way that
That's
I
the
do
answer.
things. It's just that's my
Yep.
taste, but
No, I know, and you're right. I just, when I frame art, I think we've talked about this before. But when I frame my comic art, I originally used to do these, very, I had somebody, and again, he did lovely work, but it was always like, the frame might be a color, or the
yeah.
mat might have a cutout, and whatever. And somewhere along the way, actually, it's actually a London-based answer. Many years ago, I was traveling in London, and I was over by Fortnum and Mason, and went to this exhibit at this sort of like church gallery that was there, and it was an exhibit of an old folio of like Dante's Inferno, like original drawings from Dante's Inferno. And they were very delicate. So they were very hard, they had very low light because they didn't want the light hurting them. But they were all just simply framed in like, just very simple sort of wood oak frames, like light wood frames, and just floated in the frames. And it was just that kind of gallery floating. And I sort of saw that, kind of took note of it, couldn't take any pictures. Obviously, you'd ruin the pieces. And somewhere after that, when I got back to the US, I sort of started doing a little digging, and I discovered that there was sort of, people do call that like a gallery framing, and that's a very standard thing, but I did not know it was a very standard thing, and kind of made the shift to that with
Mm.
most of my art, not all of my art, but most of my art. Sometimes I'll do a simple black frame, but most of my comic art I sort of just do in that kind of a frame, very much like
That one.
that it's all backwards. Yeah. Anyway, that one. Um, uh, but I like those results very much. So anyway, so I do know that that's what it should be for
Yeah, I
props.
can.
But yeah,
When I walk through your lovely collection, I can always tell the stuff that you've
what's
had for a
older and
long
what's
time.
newer? Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the framing. Yeah.
yeah.
But speaking of aliens, which leads me
Oh,
to Alien, which leads
okay.
me to our guest. How is that for a terrible segue?
Well, I was gonna go
Go for it.
back to my jacket. Speaking of 1982 and Blade Runner,
Oh, one last
because
thing, really quickly, really
yeah,
quickly, really
okay.
quickly. Went last night to the Academy and saw they did an almost 50th anniversary of Chinatown, the new
Ah,
4K that they digitally projected, with a fabulous introduction by Howard Koch, who was the AD on the movie, who brought pictures and some really good stories before it got
wow.
going. And then Chinatown took the kids, wife, everybody. We all went. They were seeing it for the first time, and it made I think everyone really liked it, which was really cool, because I mean, my wife had seen it before, but the kids had never seen it before, uh, and
They hung
really,
in and they
really liked it. Oh, beyond hung in. And we were walking. I just have to tell the story. We're walking in the garage back to the car, and I'm just talking to my daughter about what she liked about it, and she was talking about just, and she didn't have the words into, because she's not analyzing scripts, but she was just talking about the way so much gets set up, that just, um right from the beginning, what's his name, Burt Young is the guy that, of course, he shows up at his house at San Pedro in the end, and these things, just keep looping around, and it's so just intricately plotted. And she goes, and I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely. And she goes, like that. And she's not calling it setup. She's just talking about like the way these things sort of whatever. And she goes, like when she's getting into her car and he doesn't know he's there, and he scares her, and then she freaks out and honks the horn. And then, of course, at the end, spoiler alert, when she's dead, you hear the horn, and it's like, that's the horn, and she's like hit it with her head, because you saw that. And I went, I don't think I've ever put that together in my entire life. Like, I've seen the movie 50 years, I've seen it 50 times, and I don't think I ever thought to myself like that was a setup, so the horn sound. And I just went,
That's very
wow.
smart.
So that was
That's
very
very
cool.
smart.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Anyway, it was fabulous. So
Good.
yeah.
Well done on you showing your kids that movie. I watched it right when the 4K arrived, and God, it's just perfect. It's
I
just
have a question for you, by the way.
yeah.
When you get the 4Ks, do you download the digital too? Do you do the
No,
digital? No,
never.
you don't even bother. Okay. I was
No,
just curious. Yeah.
if I want a digital, I just buy it from the iTunes store, because that's where I keep all of my.
Sure.
I know it's sort of lazy and
Some of them don't even let
duplicate.
you, I think, get you I think some of them are for iTunes, but I think like the Chinatown one was like for like Fandango, and I don't even know if that means you
Yeah,
can even get it.
and
Anyway,
that's
I
the
was just
problem.
curious. Yeah,
Yeah, I should pay more attention, because when it is iTunes, I should just get it. But no, if I double up, I just get it on Apple, because that's where I store all my stuff, and it's
sure.
just the most, wherever you go, it's there and most convenient to pull up. And I think their quality is just slightly better than whatever they're doing is better than everybody else.
No idea, no idea. I mean, I think
Like when you watch on Prime, there's
I'll
just
watch the
something.
DVD a couple of times more before I bother
Yeah,
with the
and
digital.
it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's glorious. So here we go, Dave. Ready?
Here, segue,
So
segue,
so
buckle up,
8
segue.
years after Chinatown came the year 1982, and in
Okay, look at
1982,
that math.
it was genre summer, and we have talked about this on the show before, where that was considered the densest collection of quote unquote genre releases in the history of film, and things that have continued to be popular and collected on to this day. Many people consider 1982, outside of 1975 and 1977, the year of Jaws and the year of Star Wars, the most important.
I wasn't even going to go 75, although obviously that's important. I was going to just say, for us collecting wise, I don't know, after 77, I mean, 82 is like perhaps the main year of our collecting, really,
Yes.
more than anything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that year contains Blade Runner, Wrath of Khan,
This
Conan the
original,
Barbarian.
the original Alien, Tron.
No, not the original Alien, Dave. That's 1979.
Oh, sorry, Alien. Sorry, duh.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
sorry. All right.
Aliens is 1986, but it's all right.
Why did I? Oh no, then Ridley Scott Blade Runner. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm
really
thinking
did
about
Blade
that.
Runner
Yeah,
that year.
sorry.
Yeah, but it's okay. Those those movies did come out eventually.
But they
And
came out because of 1982.
yes, right.
Tron,
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 The Thing,
Tron,
yes, The Thing, and Road Warrior,
and Tron.
yes, and Tron. We've talked a lot about the movies in this show, but we've never talked about them all as a kind of collective in that summer as a collective. And there's a guy that we got in touch with named Chris Nashawaty, who wrote this actually wonderful book
Yeah, really
that I've
great
actually
book.
read. Unlike so many that we cover, that we read or skim or whatever. I actually read this cover to cover because I was reading it and then I got sucked into it because it's really fabulous. But it's called The Future Was Now, and it's all about that genre summer of 1982. And Chris isn't a collector per se, but he is deeply entrenched in that very important genre summer. And we felt like we'd covered so many props and prop auctions this season, we wanted to mix it up and talk about
The
this
Stuff
great book.
Dreams Are Made of book club. The Stuff Dreams Are Made of book club. So
That's
this is
right.
another entry on our book club list. So everybody buy the book and then open it up, and now you start reading it as we're talking to Chris.
And now we're gonna open up the stream and bring on the great Chris Nashawaty. Hi, Chris.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Oh,
How's
thank
that for an
you.
intro?
I loved the intro, by the way. It was fantastic.
Did you like the alien part or the aliens part the most?
I think they were both so fabulous. I can't really see them separately.
Chris, I do have to tell you something very funny, which is you or your publisher was kind enough to send us like a PDF of the book, and I was cheap enough to not buy a copy at first, and then I printed it out, and somehow like it was like the first page would be on the left side, but then like a different page would be on the right side.
Oh,
And
no.
it was like, cause I guess it was the binding of the book or something like that. So I took one airplane trip where I did do that and sort of like lost my brain trying to keep track of the page numbers. And then I actually bought the book. So you got a sale. You tricked me into a sale. So congratulations.
Well, then our fiendish scheme worked.
Yeah, no, really, actually, I was quite happy that I picked it up. Very, very, very enjoyable book. I was laughing because we spend a lot of tremendous time, talking about that year and whatever. And of course, it never occurred. We talk about it. Of course, never occurred to us to write a book. Was this a bit of a dream project for you? Is this something you'd been sort of playing with for a while, or sort of the 82 like sort of time theory? Was that something you'd been playing with?
Well, I was 13 in the summer of 1982 and a pretty avid moviegoer. And my parents were really agnostic about ratings and stuff like that. So they were really happy to drop me off at an R-rated movie. Didn't think twice about it. So I saw all 8 of the movies that are covered in the book in the summer of 1982, which, they say that, the music that you listen to when you're in high school is the music that you'll always think is the greatest, throughout your entire life. And I think that's probably true, but I think that's also true for movies to some degree. I think it was a really sort of formative summer for me at the movies. And it wasn't until a few years ago, actually, that I was, noticing that The Thing and Blade Runner, it was the anniversary of the day that they both came out. Those 2 movies came out on the same exact day. And June 25th.
Can you imagine that? I'm sorry, just hold on, just to interrupt for our audience. In this world we live in, where it sometimes feels like a good movie doesn't come out for 7 years, like it's 7 years in between movies. And on a Friday night in the summer, The Thing and Blade Runner came out. Like, let's just take that for a second. Yeah,
both
go on. I
critically
apologize.
reviled.
Yeah, both hated. Yeah.
And they both reviled at the time, and it just seemed like a good idea to write about. And the more I dug into it, I just, just looking at that summer, I noticed that there were these 8 movies that sort of fell into an 8-week period. And I don't know that I've ever seen like such a congested and like stacked lineup of movies in one summer. I mean, every summer has its, great movies, but I don't recall ever seeing anything like it. And so, I sort of started to think about why exactly this was. And, you guys know that, when Hollywood jumps on a trend, it takes time. Studios are making movies are like moving battleships. So, I always say it takes 5 years from the moment that they get an idea to assign a script, or someone thinks to go write a script, to the moment like it gets put on screen and released. And I went back 5 years from the summer of 1982, and lo and behold, there we are in the summer of 1977. Star Wars sort of catches all of the studios sleeping. They immediately want to get a piece of the action. And they all hustle these movies into production. So it felt like a really important summer for science fiction specifically. I do include one fantasy movie, Conan the Barbarian, among the 8 films discussed in the book.
Which we have no problem with that. No,
Okay, good.
not an issue for us. Yeah, not an issue for us. I saw them all in the theater that summer, except The Thing, because I'm a big scaredy cat. No one cared in my house about the ratings either, but I saw them all. But in terms of that timeline, what I was sort of thinking a little bit about, just to give them some credit, who was really impressive? That really, like Star Wars came out and they clearly just went, "How the fuck can we do this and do it as quick as we can?" Moonraker comes out in 1979. They managed to turn. I mean, I guess the book sort of has something to do with rockets, but it does not have to do with, a space station in outer space that kind of blows up in the end, like the Death Star. And they got that movie made really quickly. Like every other studio, it took a little longer to sort of get to 82, but kudos to Moonraker.
Yes, and Alien 2, Dave, because that was a Fox
Alien,
movie.
Were they racing that, knowing about Star Wars?
I think it had been bouncing around, and I think, but it was Star Wars that finally gave the juice,
pushed them over. Yeah,
it was sort of an independent film, and then that was the thing that brought it over to Fox, and they're like, oh, okay, and it was actually Ridley seeing Star Wars in the theater and sitting there and having his brain blown out of the back of his head, saying, how do I do? Because he had done The Duelist, and he's like, I think he was working on, forgive me, there was a historical epic,
Tristan
right?
And Isolde.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Yes, the Arthurian, early, like proto-Arthurian
I'm sure I would have enjoyed it. I will point out, I'm sure that would have been good too.
It would have been good, but we would have been robbed of Alien. And that happened sort of in immediate response, but that was also Fox chasing themselves.
When I think about, again, chasing that Star Wars magic, I actually think about like shitty TV. I think about Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers. And by the way, they took some of those episodes of, I think, both of those, and they put those out theatrically, or at least in Europe, maybe in America too. I can't remember. But wherever, because you see, like, but I'm just saying, but again, that was the sort of the quick, cheaper ripoff, whatever. So again, 82, but
Space 1999 was another one.
Oh, that's right. That's right. The moon, whatever, blows up, or half something, half blows up. Yeah.
There's a thesis that we should go into the details of the hows and whys, but there's a thesis.
Did we say ET, by the way? Sorry, did we forget ET?
Yeah.
ET too. Sorry. Yeah.
And Poltergeist. Yeah. Which is more, I would say, is more kind of spectral horror than that's more of a fantasy film too, as well as Conan.
But I think certainly takes advantage of changes in the effects industry on another level.
I mean, that's why I just called it very simply genre summer.
Yeah.
And the thesis that Chris gets at in the book, which I really enjoyed, and I've read essentially the making of all of those movies individually, but I enjoyed reading it because of the way you structure it, the sort of struggle to get them to the screen, and then the release and the reaction is all happening kind of at once, because you're kind of telling them in order of how when they were developed to when they get released.
The order with which they get released
at a time. It's almost chronological as we approach that summer of 1982, which I really enjoyed. But you had this thesis that it was that summer, more than Star Wars, more than Jaws, it was that summer that changed Hollywood and convinced Hollywood that this is the future was now. that this is the way forward, because Star Wars and Jaws, I think, to a lot of people felt like these sort of white swan moments that were created by these individual genius auteurs in Spielberg and then Lucas, that you couldn't naturally just repeat, but it was the sort of wide breadth of success over the course of the summer of 1982 with all these different genre filmmakers and all these different genres, some low budget, some higher budget, that it worked so well as a summer that it convinced the studios that this kind of, the genre summer
That
was
the
the
summer
future.
was the summer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that this is when we should put these out. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
also think,
you
yeah,
sort of credit and then blame our current situation.
yeah.
You credit 1982 slash blame 1982 for our current situation, the good and the bad of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting because I feel like Jaws and Star Wars were almost proof of concept for the existence of this audience um, that really hadn't been catered to previously. In other words, like these movies came out, and I think the studios themselves were surprised that there were moviegoers who would go back and see the movie 3, 4, 5 times. Right? I don't think that that was a habit that a lot of people really had
Mm.
at the time, and so I think that they recognized that from the success of those two movies that there was this genre audience that had been ignored, that was sort of treated as this geeky nerdy niche, and really nothing more than a niche, when in fact they really, could represent, make or break a blockbuster. So I think that 75 and 77 sort of proved that this audience was there, and 82 was really the first collective attempt to appeal to that audience and cash in on it.
I also think there's something funny, which is even with like Lucas, if you'd probably asked Lucas and he'd had the success of American Graffiti, but he, I think, sort of thought of himself as like a small independent filmmaker. Star Wars was this thing, but there was less of a sense that he was a genre filmmaker. Whereas by 82, these guys almost start to define themselves a little bit as genre filmmakers, as well as the success or lack of success of these movies. So I think there's also just that shift of who these guys were. Obviously, a whole bunch of different guys from different walks of life, directing wise, but it does change the course of some of their careers in a huge way. They become sort of known for these kinds of movies, much as The Summer does. And I also thought the other thing that was sort of interesting is I think 82 obviously ties into a little bit. For at least in my world, and you guys can speak to this as well, but Chris, we're sort of near the same age. I'm just a year younger. The birth of the video store, the
Yeah.
rentals, which obviously you can have these movies come out, and then all of a sudden, even if you didn't see Blade Runner in the theater, and even if you heard it was crappy, you could rent it and
Well, and
decide for yourself. Yeah,
that was my world. I mean,
yeah.
I was 3 in the summer of 1982, so I certainly missed the genre summer. But those VHS boxes were my childhood. Seeing those all in the movie store, and I had much of less of a sense of. For me, it wasn't about what's in the theater versus what's on home video. For me, it was just what can I watch, and it didn't matter to me as a 6 and 7 year old whether the movie was from my year or 6 years earlier. I didn't care if it had genre in it, sword and sorcery or aliens or pulse rifles or whatever it was, robot detectives. I was totally into it. Chris, I'm curious. I have read the making of probably half of the movies that you cover in that book. And I still found new little details in there that I did not know as I was going along, which I was impressed and shows the depth of your research. What kind of access did you need slash get to do this book? To studio archives, to the original people that made it? Did you need it, or was all the research available out there in primary source for you? How did that all go?
Yeah, it's a good question. A big part of the answer is that I worked at Entertainment Weekly for 25 years, interviewing filmmakers and stars and things like that. And so there were a lot of these conversations that informed the book that I had already had, I had on tape, and I could revisit. But obviously, you want to do as much reporting as possible. My feeling is that, especially if you're covering a movie or a trend that's been previously reported, the best thing to do is just pick up the phone and talk to people, because that's where you're going to get the fresh anecdotes. You can ask your own questions and sort of guide the conversation about the things you care about. So, I conducted a bunch of new interviews for this. Ridley Scott, I talked to a bunch of times, Oliver Stone, Nicholas Meyer, just, the directors, I think were the best source of information, but also, out in LA here, I think that the Margaret Herrick Museum, is really an underappreciated jewel for people who write books, or, journalists who write deeper articles. It's really, you could spend weeks there just pouring through archives and like studio memos and things like that, that, often you can find some real gold, so to me, that's probably the best resource other than reporting. And then, as you mentioned, there's a lot of previously written stuff out there. I spent a lot of time on eBay buying back issues of Fangoria from 1982 and paying through
Good
the
for
nose
you.
for them. But it's just gathering, everything. And
When
then
you were
sorting through it.
talking to some of the directors recently, the newer conversations, where I'm assuming you were reaching out and explaining the thesis of the book and
Yeah.
talking to them about this concept of 1982, were any of them, was it something they had been conscious of themselves before you brought it, like sort of brought it into the conversation? Like were they more struck by it, like, oh right, that, oh my god, that was 82 also, you know what I mean? I was curious either how much they were thinking about it, or on the flip side, have you heard from anybody after the fact that has now read the book or read the review or any version of that, where they themselves were sort of struck by this sort of, by your thesis, I guess?
I think all of the directors were very aware of E.T., just
Sure.
because it was the 800-pound gorilla, but that just became, everyone's nightmare at the box office because it took all of their audience. But yeah, I think most of them were a little bit surprised. I think that they may have said like, "Oh, that was the summer of Blade Runner," and you say to them, "Yeah, but it was also the summer of this, that, and the other." And I think that it's
Tron.
not something they necessarily considered. Yeah, Tron. It's not necessarily
And
something that
Alien
they
and
spent a
Aliens.
lot of time thinking about, especially that wonderful
Brought to you
sequel,
by Prop
Aliens, from
Store.
1982.
Yeah, I mean that it's funny, and I was gonna call out earlier on your list of people you talked to. You said Oliver Stone, and people might be sitting there and going like, "What Oliver Stone movie was released in 1982?" Little known fact, or kind of more obscure fact, that Oliver Stone wrote the first draft and was originally intended to direct Conan the Barbarian. And I will say, as a deep cut Conan fan, I have found and read that script, and
It's
it is
nuts.
It's fucking crazy.
bananas.
Yeah.
It's a coke fueled
Yeah,
nightmare.
yeah.
And I don't mean that in a necessarily complimentary way. All credit to Mr. Stone, whose movies I
Oh, I
love.
sort of mean it. I would say it in a complimentary way. Like
But I'm just so
it's a
grateful. I'm
sight
so
to behold.
grateful
Yeah.
that
It's certainly
Milius got
ambitious.
involved
Yeah.
and made the movie that he made. And really, I'm actually very surprised that Mr. Stone got shared screenplay credit on that movie, given how Milius that final movie is, and just how nothing to do it has with that. The first thing is like it's a science fiction film about like a kind of a zombie apocalypse. It's really kind of crazy. It has nothing to do with Robert E. Howard, really, or Conan. But
I
No.
there
know,
you
but
go.
it is that thing of first guy in on an adaptation, which I've
Yes.
unfortunately learned. Thank you, Writers Guild. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think Stone
um
was he really loved the subject. He really dug Conan, and he was really excited at the prospect of directing it, and he really cared about the script, even if it was, sort of just this fever dream of, staying up way too late for way too many days in a row. But he always envisioned Conan as like almost like a James Bond saga where, there should be 12 installments of it rather than one. I think he
There
probably
should.
tried to stuff all of that into that original
Into one.
script.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
But in his defense, he took the script and many years later was able to turn it into Any Given Sunday. So that was cool.
And he also, I want to give credit where it's due, because even though Milius is obviously the author of the movie in a way, Stone gave us the great line from the movie about the lamentations of the women, to see your enemies driven before you. Like the most famous line from the movie is pure, unfiltered, straight up Oliver Stone.
Which is funny because for Milius, and this is now Conan the Barbarian cast here, but of course I was going to turn it into that, guys. Haha, tricks on you. It's funny that that's the case, because for Milius, Conan was his way of making the Genghis Khan film that no one would let him make, and we all know that line is an adapted kind of pull from one of Khan's generals, right? That was a line,
which is maybe why Milius left it in. So maybe that's why he changed the line. Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, but it's just weird that they're both thinking of Genghis Khan. I mean, who doesn't think of Genghis Khan? I'm thinking of him right now.
Fair enough.
Chris, do you have a personal favorite among that sort of murderers lineup from that summer? For any reason you want to choose why it's a favorite. Yeah,
I think if you had asked me in the summer of 1982, I would have told you E.T. for sure. I was 13. I was really, that was kind of served on a platter for the demographic that I was. But now I think it's actually, I would say that my two favorite, and it's, again, I love all these movies so much, but I would say The Thing for sure is number one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and then probably The Road Warrior is number two. But The Thing to me is a movie that, as people sort of wrote about during COVID, it's one of those movies that is like a really great metaphor for whatever moment you're living in. Which a lot of that stuff that's based on 50s sci-fi really is. There's such great allegories. But I think that movie is terrific. I love Carpenter from this period in his career. He was really on such a great hot streak. I mean, I love Escape from New York. I love Halloween. I mean, like, he was really on a roll. And, there's something about the setting, the cast of character actors, obviously the Rob Bottin special effects are just, chef's kiss, but like a gooey chef's kiss. And it's really, for me, that movie is just a masterpiece.
I was Ryan. Can you pick?
I have a question. Conan? I was going to say I have a question for Chris that leads to a question for you, Dave, and then we'll come back around to me.
But I am curious when we get around to you. I like the way Chris answered that, and I was going to say, is your young kid answer of whatever age you want to pick? I'll pick when I was 12 years old. Is your answer the same?
That's what I was going to ask you, Dave. Did you have a 1982 favorite versus a now favorite? I wanted to know from Chris, did you love, it wasn't your favorite because E.T. was, but did you love The Thing in 1982 when you saw it in the theater?
Honestly, it kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it was the movie that made me a Fangoria subscriber. On the other hand, it was a little intense for me at the time.
You had to subscribe to Fangoria to convince yourself it wasn't real. That was why.
Exactly. Yes. See, it was all a movie. It freaked me out for sure. I think the scene where the guy who was on LA Law, Richard Dicehart, is using the paddles on the chest, and then the chest opens and
up,
snaps on his hands. That's like, and then the head skittering away is another one where it's just like, that was really hardcore for a 13-year-old to take in.
I probably didn't see that.
And that's why to this day, Chris refuses to perform CPR on anybody.
I was going to say, I did not see that movie. I didn't see it I saw it on video, probably not probably took me 3 or 4 years to finally like get the courage up to see it. So at that point I'm 15 or 16 and it still freaked the F out of me.
Yeah.
Like I can watch it now because I kind of know everything that happens, but
Yeah.
I do remember seeing it the first time and being really, really just
It's horrifying.
horrified. Yeah.
I don't
Just horrified.
I
Yeah.
that movie's always been with me, and it's always sort of freaks me out. I really love it, but I can't remember seeing it for the first time, if that makes sense. So Dave, what was your favorite in the summer of '82, and now what sits as your favorite?
It's funny. I mean, E.T. was just, it wasn't even a movie. It was like an event. Do you know what I mean? Like I remember not only did I see it, but a couple of us, like a couple of kids, we got together and had like this like graduation party at the end of the year. And the party was a screening of E.T. So and it was everybody's like fourth or fifth time seeing it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can't even sit here and say like, it was a movie. It just felt like it just was. Do you know what I mean? Like you couldn't not see it. So it's hard to go, I loved it more than something else. It just was sort of like, it was like you breathe oxygen and you see E.T. I love them all. You know, don't think I particularly understood Blade Runner at the time. I was scarred by Spock dying, even though
Mm.
you know, it seemed like even then you sort of like, well, it seems like they might bring him back, but it still was sad. But for me at the time, Tron, the video game of it all just
Wow.
blew me away because it just seemed like they were in the video game. I don't know what else to say,
Yeah.
which
Mm.
seemed like the dream come true. So Tron, which I still enjoy to this day, but I don't think on quite the same level. I do love it, but it is not my favorite of them these days. Not in a bad way. Just I think you know, it's like I'd like to say Blade Runner because I want to seem sort of smart, but I am going to go Wrath of Khan at the end of the day. Just
You're not as sophisticated as our guest
I'm
Steve
not as
Loader
sophisticated.
was.
No,
You
exactly.
didn't identify with the
No, I did
drunken
not. The
detective
existential angst of the detective.
at
I
age
do.
12.
Yeah, I do appreciate all of that, but I don't. There's just something about Wrath of Khan, and I feel like also just like the lessons it eventually sort of taught me a little about writing that I don't know have just stuck with me. So
Yeah.
I think I still have to. I have to say Wrath of Khan, but Tron back in the day. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard. It's very hard for me. I mean, clearly Conan has sat with me for the
Right.
longest, I think, across my life. And that
Do
was
you think when
probably
you saw it as a little kid, you were wowed by it even then?
oh, for sure. Yeah,
Okay,
for
cool.
sure. Because it was I don't know where my love of quote unquote sword and sorcery came from. I don't, but I've always as a consumer of media have gravitated toward kind of medieval fantasy, for lack of a better word, more even than science fiction. I read every book in that world. I mean, probably Lord of the Rings. Maybe that's the source of it all.
If you
But Dave,
like
there were
that stuff, there's a series called Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin that I think you would actually really
interesting.
dig. Yeah, write that down. Yeah.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
But Bart, can you make a note of that? I will check it out. Is there a prequel? Is there a prequel?
You know what?
Like
Who
more
knows?
of a history book than an actual
Like sort
a
of like a
novel narrative?
two-part, like a maester writing something
Yeah,
about something.
like
Yeah.
kind of a Rashomon sort of take on the but yes, obviously my love that has led me now to the collision of fandom and employment where I don't even know which end is up anymore and whether I love anything at all. But so I think I gravitated most towards Conan because there was just nothing was made in that world. Like at least science fiction. If you were a science fiction fan, you had
Krull.
Did you like
you
the Beastmaster?
no, as a kid, and I think I saw it too late. I think I got
I
around
will
to it too
not
late.
sit here and have you disparage
Besmirch.
Mark Singer. Yeah.
No, and there was just other than the Bakshi Lord of the Rings cartoon, which I really liked. There was just nothing in that kind of fantasy world. If you wanted fantasy, you had to read a book or watch
Did you see? By the way, did you see this anime
televised
trailer? This like Lord of the Rings anime trailer that was making
The
rounds
Rohirrim?
yesterday?
Yeah.
whoa, that looked cool. I had no
Yeah, it's
idea anybody
very
was doing
cool.
that. Yeah, I'm excited about
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's
Yeah.
part of Warner Brothers. This podcast is brought to you by Warner Brothers. That's Warner Brothers keeping alive, I guess, of their separated rights from Lord of the Rings, so they can do that, whereas the Prime, rights, they can't encroach on that territory because it's within the Lord of the Rings span, or whatever it is, or within the timeline that Prime isn't allowed to touch. And Peter Jackson did have to do with the Rohirrim,
Oh wow,
whereas
I
he
didn't
does
know that
not
either.
with
Yeah, the new show. Yeah.
the Prime show. But I think that was the reason for Conan, because there was just nothing like it, and that was so everything about what I loved about that kind of world that I think I just most gravitated towards it. But now I think, if you really put me to it, my favorite movie from that summer is Blade Runner. But again, my first exposure to Blade Runner, because I'm a child, as David always points out to our audience. I saw Blade Runner as basically as the final cut, the director's cut / final cut, for the first time, when it really imprinted on me. So I got the retrospective Ridley Scott thinking, not thinking better of what he had done, but Ridley Scott getting to go, this is actually the thing that I intended to do. So I got to see his full intent first, instead of kind of growing into that and experiencing the voiceover version and the
But
happy
more
ending and
importantly, you may
getting
have
there.
been just older in a
I was
good way.
older and ready to
Yes.
absorb it. Exactly. And I think my adult brain just totally gravitates towards that movie. But those are the two for me. And then I would say Wrath of Khan sits in there, and then kind of all the rest of them. E.T. I loved as a kid, but it because I didn't see it in the theater, it didn't have that event thing to me. It was just another movie to me. I talked to people that saw it in the theater, and they had this religious experience. I guess I just never had that with ET, because I saw it on VHS when I was older.
Right, but at the same time, there was not a house in America that didn't have the ET VHS tape. Like, there were people that had
Correct.
no VHS tapes except ET,
ET.
which does speak to. I understand you didn't have that moment, but the fact that your parents bought it regardless, it just sort of funny that it was there in your house.
Yeah, my dad was into all that stuff,
Yeah.
so he had all that stuff anyway. Yeah.
Can I ask a Blade Runner question for a second?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, David, I'm curious, because we're roughly the same age. When you saw Blade Runner in the theater, I'm assuming that the first version of Blade Runner you saw was the version with the voiceover. And I'm curious what you think of, because this is one of those things that people ask me all the time, and I sort of feel like embarrassed to admit this, but
No, I'm
it's
with
like
you. I know exactly what you're about to say. Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah,
I didn't mind it.
I kind of like the voiceover, because it was
It's
my first
funny.
exposure.
I was talking a little bit about Chinatown before you came on, which I saw a screening of. And with the original voiceover, to me, it perfectly fit in to the detective genre. And for me, made a certain amount of sense of why the detective genre was so great, which was you could do it, but you could do it wherever you wanted to. And so the Maltese Falcon is different than Chinatown,
Yeah.
which is different than Blade Runner, and that it kind of lined them all up. And to me, it was trench coat and getting pulled back into a case and whatever. And I never had a problem with it. And it never bothers me. I mean, I now watch, I guess I do watch the, whatever they call it, the final cut, and I appreciate it. But every now and then I go back and I watch the one with I've always sort of kind of liked it. Yeah. I have no problem with it. Yeah.
Gotcha. I agree 100%. It's like,
I was going to say, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't, when I read about it, I don't certainly enjoy the way it was put to them, the way they had no choice. So I don't enjoy that aspect of it. But the end result, I had no problem with. And I certainly don't think it was the reason why people didn't enjoy it that summer. But anyway,
Do you think that Harrison Ford, what does your gut tell you about if Harrison Ford intentionally read the voiceover poorly so that they wouldn't use it? Because he notoriously hated the voiceover.
It certainly sounds like him. It also sort of sounds like, I don't know, maybe he was an extra little high that day too. I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, who knows? Um, and yet he's such a good actor that even in his sort of flattest whatever, it's almost like the flatness worked for what it
It gives it
needed
a
to
Mitchum
be.
vibe.
Yeah, it's that kind of just, I don't give a fuck because I'm Sam Spade
Yeah.
and I don't give a
Right.
fuck.
Yeah.
So he may have inadvertently looped around into the
I just
correct
think
performance. Yeah.
some actors give good VO voice and others don't.
Yeah.
And I just think Harrison, I believe that he didn't love it, but I don't believe that he was unprofessional and didn't put whatever actor spin on it that he could to make it work. I just don't believe that. I just think that Harrison, and I love Harrison, he's one of my favorite actors. I just don't think he's a voiceover voice guy, and I think that's why some of that stuff lands pretty flat. And also, I don't think the writing of the voiceover is very good either, because that was done late. And there's writing quality in the film that is so good, that David Peoples' writing in particular, that the voiceover was done by somebody else.
But I still would maintain, if when you saw it, if they'd never quote unquote fixed it, and when you saw it were you in high school? Is that when you first saw it, or were you in college already?
I definitely saw it. Probably I saw it. I was the same age as you were when you saw it, which
Gotcha.
was when the director's cut came out 10 years later.
Sure.
It was the advent of the director's cut that drew me into
Right. Gotcha.
seeing
If there had never been a director's cut and someone had just presented you with the original cut of Blade Runner at that point, I think you would have enjoyed it and not ever questioned it. Yeah. I just think it just kind of was. Yeah.
Possibly taken up drinking.
Yeah. Chris, are you a collector of any sort? Just kind of curious, just because we're obsessed with it from obviously we love it as movies. I think we certainly both appreciate it as writers, but also obviously the collecting gene. Where does collecting fit into your world?
I am a bit of a collector. I for a long time really accumulated DVDs in an unhealthy way. Movie one sheets.
Yep.
Don't have the biggest collection, but certainly, I've bought things that mean something to me. I have a really nice one sheet from Downhill Racer I'm really proud of.
Oh, wow.
And I think outside of movie related stuff, my biggest collecting impulse was baseball cards.
Okay.
And it's really fun because I have twin 10-year-old boys now, and they about a year ago got started on collecting cards, sports cards, and it's been such a blast to not only re-experience it through them, but also kind of get back into it myself and have an excuse to maybe buy some baseball cards because I'm taking them to the store.
We have that going on in my house. It's been kind of going on for the last 2 years, but right now I think because it's baseball season, and I just took my kids to Yankee Stadium for the first time. New York Yankee fans since I was a kid, grew up in the city. So right now there's a little bit of a peak. And so we are buying stuff, all new stuff. No, there's no going backwards. We're buying new stuff every now and then. Through a collector friend, I've bumped into some unopened packages from, stuff in the last 5 years. And once in a while we've pulled some interesting stuff, like opening up like a 2017 pack and getting like an Aaron Judge card, a rookie Aaron Judge card and whatnot. But even just, are you struck? Because again, we're the same age. When we were kids, you bought a pack of Tops and that was it.
That's it.
And now when we go to the store, we stare like this because we have no idea what to buy.
There's
Chrome,
so many
regular, that, Fleer, Bowman. It's just like it's
and then they have
in its own
Top
way.
Series 2 and Chrome and blah blah blah. So it's like,
so do you have a plan?
What was the one that started with a D? What was the one that started with a D? Donruss. Yes, I was a Donruss guy.
I think they're now all owned by Topps, or someone owns all of them, but they still keep the illusion of these separate. So there's Topps Chrome, and then there'll be Donruss Chrome, and it is glorious and infuriating at the same
Yeah,
time. So
it's
do
a
you
lot.
have what do you buy? Like if you
I'm
take
a
your
tops
kids.
guy.
Yep.
I'm a
Okay.
tops guy. Always have been. I think I started in collecting in 1977. So that was my first real year of collecting. Packs were 15 cents. I mean, now they're like,
Yeah.
$9. But so
It's
I was
$9 and you get like 4 cards. And
right. But
when
even
we were kids, you used to get those long like 4-pack things with
yeah,
so many cards. It was so
yeah,
great. Yeah.
love
Bubblegum?
those. But they
No gum. Mhm.
no gum anymore, which is all about keeping the value of the cards. And that's one of the things that's very different. I mean, like, I think I always knew that like cards were worth something, but I feel like now it's become almost like scratching a lottery ticket because you open a pack and there could be an autographed or like a graded, a numbered card. Like this is card number 5 out of 500, and it's got this sort of you feel like a lot of collectors are they don't even care about the cards. They're just looking for that, chasing that one, thing that's going to be worth a lot of money. And that kind of bums me out a little bit.
Yeah, there's a sense like you open up a pack and you get like some great all-star in the last year of his career. And because it's not purple or autographed or whatever, like and by the way, if you look it up, it's probably worth 65 cents. So it is empirically not worth anything.
Yeah.
And yet this career and who he is, and certainly if he's on the right, a team you like or whatever, there's value there. And that has been the hardest thing to sort of try and teach my son, because
Yeah.
there is this sense of like, oh, we got an autograph. Oh, it's not a good player. Oh, it's not this, it's not that, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, it's become a very strange hobby. I almost don't recognize it anymore. But just the last thing I'll say about baseball cards is that Topps does put out this series of cards called Topps Heritage, which is a throwback series.
Those are the ones that they pick a year and then they
Yeah.
look like that old year.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So the current players this year, the current players are pictured on cards that look like 1975 Topps.
Oh, that's fun.
So, and that's a series I really like. So I've been buying a lot of those. That's sort of what my go-to purchase these days.
That's cool.
Have you ever? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing happened with comic books. As soon as comic books became aware of their value and the stupid poly bags and the variant covers and all that, that was when comics sort of did this. What made baseball cards collectible back in the day was no one was collecting them. That was what made them valuable, and so few people had the vision to keep those things and keep them in pristine condition, and that's what made them interesting. And once you're doing it cynically and chasing it, it loses a lot of the magic.
Yeah, for sure.
Chris, to take you back into 82 and movies and whatnot, has movie props, has that ever, whether it occurred to you or in your many years as a writer doing set visits and whatnot, did anyone ever say, hey, you want a ray gun or anything like that? Has that ever entered into your universe at all?
I've never thought to ask, and no one's really been forthcoming by offering them, but now I'm feeling foolish that I didn't.
No.
It's
never, first of all, it's never too late, but also don't feel foolish. Yeah.
I guess I'm a little intimidated by it. I feel like it's a hobby that's outside of my price range. Props.
It has definitely gotten there, but there are cool things. I mean, one of the things that I've loved, from these, like, even again, these 82 movies is, you could find a call sheet from an original call sheet with like, you can look at it and go, oh my God, this is the day they shot the Genesis cave from Wrath of Khan, and kind of go, that's a couple $100. I mean, it's it's like a movie, and you can frame it. You could put it on a wall like a movie poster. I don't know. There are levels to it, but I was just curious if you'd ever bumped into
not
it.
really. No, but I'll tell you what I would like to get from 1982 is one of those Codalith cells that they use to animate Tron.
I can hook you up with that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about that. They are, I don't want to say they're, how does one put this? They're not as uncommon as you think, because obviously the sheer number of them that they had to do. So then it does get into like, can you find the right one from a fun scene and a nice moment where, everybody's kind of looking in a direction that you kind of want them looking. But we'll talk about that offline. I'm going to make that happen, and then you get horribly addicted to movie prop collecting.
Collecting movie props. So, Chris, just before we bring this on home, I wanted to just go back to the book, and ask, what was the most interesting thing that you learned that you didn't already know
Yeah, anything
from
that
any of those movies?
surprised you,
Yeah.
something that you bumped into where you went, "Whoa, who knew that?" Yeah.
I think um, the more that I read about and talked to people about Rob Bottin, the more I found that fascinating. I found him fascinating. You know, the effects, the creature effects for The Thing to me. Again, I'm talking about The Thing. There are 7 other movies in the book, but The Thing, those effects to me are really stunning and revolutionary. And he was like 20 at the time, and you know, the creativity and sort of the freedom that he was given by John Carpenter, and the budget. You know, I think, you know, he got a pretty massive budget to make these things. But that stuff to me was fascinating. I really, I really, to me, he was the character that if anyone learns a new name from this book, I hope he's the one.
Oh, that's very cool. I love that. Just to jump down his career later on, where I became aware of him, which again, later than The Thing, was I remember being so struck by some of the masks and the effects work in Total Recall. That was where
Mm,
I learned Rob Bottin's first name, because I always just loved like some of the stuff with like the thing up the anyway,
yeah,
neither here nor there, but I just that's where I kind of came into his where it got to.
RoboCop as
Yeah.
well.
yeah,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
yeah,
RoboCop for
more than
sure.
anything about
Yeah,
that. Yes,
Yeah.
of course,
yeah.
yeah. Although for whatever reason I don't think I knew the name then. I know the name now, but I think for whatever reason in my reading Starlog and whatnot, I
Yeah.
guess I clocked the name later on. Yeah.
They go a lot into his work in this series on Amazon Prime, or at least that's where it is in the UK. I think
Yeah,
it's an
it's
Amazon
same
Prime thing.
here. The making of RoboCop
RoboDoc,
thing. Yeah.
which is a multi-part series. I think it's 4 parts, and it's a deep dive. Everything you ever wanted to know about the making of RoboCop, and they go deep into the Rob Bottin stuff. And he is, I will just say, noticeably absent
Yeah.
from the talking heads in that movie. He is unavailable, which I think adds to the mystery. Let's
Yeah,
just say.
he's an elusive cat. He the book I wrote, my first book was about Roger Corman, and Rob Bottin had worked, you know, his first job was working on some of Corman's sort of cheapy monster movies, and I reached out to him to talk to him, and he finally did get back to me, but it was after the book the book had already come out. It was
That's
about
about right.
six
Yep.
months
Perfect.
after the request, and it was lovely to talk to him. But you know, he's tough to pin down for sure.
Yeah,
That's
that's
very
the
funny.
rumor.
Do you
Um,
have do you have a and obviously you may not want to say it if it's do you have a next book that you're thinking about or something? Because one of the things that I thought was really cool, and I hope this is okay to say, I was really struck by, for a book about, you know, movies from 1982, it was really exciting to see it get written up in the New Yorker and stuff. Like it seemed like the theme of it all hit a lot of people, and it got, you know, just that where the book kind of got reviewed and brought up was really interesting. The New York Times and stuff, just in a way that normally when I pick a book up about movie, like, you know, like
Yeah,
movies I like, nobody gives a shit, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, I
so
do.
I did feel like that must have been, you know, hopefully a nice thing both for you, just in general, but obviously for sales and stuff. And I did wonder if that allows you to like sort of, do you have a next big project that you're thinking about?
Well, the first thing is, it was very nice to see it written up in so many places, and I don't take it as much as a compliment as I do take it as there are probably a lot of Gen Xers who are in positions of power as editors at these magazines. So the summer of
Certainly
1982
true, but
speaks to
I
them.
don't know, 364 other days of the year,
Right.
they are not writing about
That's
genre
true.
stuff. So
Fair
take
enough.
it as a compliment. Yeah.
Thank you. As far as the next book goes, it's funny you should ask today because I literally signed the contract today. It's with the same publisher. I don't want to go too deep into the subject, but I
Of
will tell you
course.
it's a movies book. It takes place in the same decade, but later in it. And it's a rise and fall story about a company that you know, was very hot for a while and then very, very cold. So you could probably read
that
between the
starts
lines.
with that starts with a
It
C.
may or may not start with
Starts
a C.
Okay. Yep.
But it's a really good.
I would have really laughed, by the way, if you had just said, "I'm writing a
They
new book
made
about
both
how."
Alien and Aliens in the same summer.
Right, the same summer.
No, if you had just said, like, "I'm writing a book about 1987 called 1987 Go Fuck Yourself, the worst year ever of movies." Yeah.
Maybe I should do that instead.
82
Chris,
great, 87 terrible. Yeah. Chris,
this was great fun.
Really,
Thank
really
you.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thank you.
Please plug yourself. Tell us
where can
the name
people
of the book.
find you. The book obviously is The
Future
Future. Was
Yeah,
now
The
available
Future's
on
now.
Amazon and independent booksellers, whatever that is anymore. But yeah,
Buy it anywhere you like, just as long as you buy it. And then I would say I'm most active on Twitter, or I guess X. So you can look for me there at Chris Nashawaty.
very,
Great.
very cool.
And look forward to Chris's next book.
I know you're not a collector. We like to play this game. If you were a collector and you could have anything from any of the summer of '82 movies, a prop to sit in your living room, bedroom, office, or whatnot, you can pick from any one of the summer '82 movies. What are you going for?
It's got to be one of Conan's like broadswords or something. Obviously, I would if money was no object, maybe a Blade Runner
Money
spinner.
is no object. You pick anything you like, so you can have a spinner.
I think they have a spinner. I think they have a Blade Runner spinner designed by Sid Mead at the Peterson Museum out here in LA. I'd walk out with that for sure.
All right, that's a done deal. So not the thing right up to the moment of props, and then not the thing. Interesting. Okay. Ryan, anything that you don't own already that you haven't talked about that you want to pick from one of those fine '82 movies? Yeah,
it's a boring answer, but it's a real answer. Trench coat, Deckard trench coat.
Yep.
Complete the costume.
The ensemble. Yep, very nice, very nice.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
I think if I could get anything in the world, if such a thing existed as like the battle damaged Enterprise from Wrath of Khan, like just to go for something ridiculous and crazy, whatever, I would happily pick that up in my SUV or whatever, or tow it over to my house.
It has been studio scale year.
Paint the wall yellow and put it on up. Yeah, put it on up. Yeah,
very good. Good answer. There was that nacelle around for a while.
Yes, I know, but you know what I mean. Like you just really want it. Yeah,
Bango.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much. This was fantastic. As always, please follow us on social media at Props Podcast. Please like and review us on your podcast app and also our YouTube channel, The Stuff Dreams Are Made Of. You can watch this there, plus all our videos, unboxing videos, prop previews, all sorts of videos there. And what's our email, Ryan?
dreamsaremadeofpodcast@gmail.com.
And please email us if you have any advice for Ryan's jet lag. Please let us know. Yeah, very important.
I'm taking all comers.
I feel like you woke up during this, so I'm bravo.
It brought me to life. It was the half gallon of coffee that I drank during this, and now I'm getting heart palpitations. But I feel good about it generally. I feel like I'm ready to sit down and write the sequel to Oliver Stone's Conan.
Go run around the block, then paint your basement, and then write Conan Part 2.
Yellow.
Yeah.
Then The Mutants Return, Conan 2. Yeah.
Conan 2, The Mutants Return, The Spy Who Loved Me. Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye, everyone.